the god of shinobi, the Pirate King. Two of the most powerful characters from Naruto and One Piece. At their time, they sat at the throne of strength and acquired a level of power that made the whole world think twice before doing anything, allowing them to shape it as they see fit. But, and as iconic as they are, the influence they had on their worlds can be easily underrated or overestimated, depending on how much the story highlights their achievements. The way they are portrayed to the audience can be misleading sometimes, and if we put them head to head in a comparison, a lot of people might find the answer obvious based on what they think about them. But is it really that simple? That's the question that's made me curious. So I put on my nerdy glasses, dug into their lives, and evaluated their contributions. To make it fun, fair, and easy to follow, I came up with a scoring system and broke their stories into 3 phases: early life, glory days, and post-mortem. We'll be putting them side by side to see who comes out on top in an influence battle. Wow, I sound like death battle now. Whatever, it's fun. Now, before we dive into the phases, let me quickly explain how the scoring works. If you're rooting so much for a character, you may need a calculator. We're gonna focus on 4 different factors to determine how much effect each of them has. The first one would be the scale. This looks at who and how many people are affected by their action. Did their choices impact a small group, an entire nation, or the whole world? The second factor is the duration. How long did the effect last? Was it a fleeting moment, a few decades, or something that shaped history permanently? The contribution weight. How much of the event was actually their doing? Were they just a small part of the equation, or were they the reason it even happened? And in some occasions, their contribution is very important, but their presence alone is not enough for that thing to happen. Lastly, the impact magnitude. How big was the effect? Was it something minor and reversible, or was it so huge that it defined the world in ways that couldn't be undone? For every major event, we'll evaluate these 4 elements, multiplying the scores in this way: the scale score multiplied by the duration, multiplied by the contribution, and then multiplied by the impact. This may not be perfect, but it sounds to me fair enough and can give you a clear picture. Before we begin, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It will help me with the YouTube algorithm and will support me into making videos like this in the near future. Our first phase examines their early days, and we're starting with Hashirama. Hashirama was born during the Warring States period, where the Senju and the Uchiha clans were in constant conflict. It's a period of time where your childhood is cut short by the age of 12. At that early age, Hashirama was already sent to fight alongside the adults. Hashirama could arguably be Genin or Shonin level at the time, and without him at the battlefield, the tides wouldn't be so different. And perhaps the most notable thing that he did in this period is forming a friendship rivalry with Madara. This is one of the reasons that Madara trained harder and eventually became the leader of the Uchiha clan. And together they dreamed of a world where children wouldn't have to die in war. But Madara is a genius and he probably would have gotten there on his own. Because Hashirama was growing in strength over time, I decided to split his childhood into 2 phases. The age of 14. Hashirama is not just some skilled kid anymore. He was becoming a leader, his strength reaching a whole other level. After losing 3 of his brothers, he started advocating for peace, believing it would end the conflict between the Senju and the Uchiha. Hashirama during this period earned so much respect that he eventually took over as the leader of the Senju clan. This gave him the chance to instill the roots of the Will of Fire. But before he was the leader, no real changes happened, and his biggest influence would be limited to the battlefield. Him being there could be decisive for every battle that he's a part of. Here's his score for the second phase. Not too much. Let's see if Roger can do any better. Roger is known for being the Pirate King, but the title wasn't something he achieved overnight. It was a long journey that started when Roger, roughly 25 at the time, met Rayleigh and convinced him to join his crew. Together, they formed the Roger Pirate, starting small with just a simple boat. They navigated the East Blue Islands, growing in strength over time. But in order for them to reach the Grand Line and beyond, they needed a sturdier ship and a proper navigator. It is not clear exactly how many people stayed with Roger back then, but we can assume it was fewer than 10. Possibly just a handful of trusted members. We're just gonna pretend he's Luffy to fill the gaps because we don't really know that much about him. Regardless, this decision completely reshaped the lives of those who joined him. He without a doubt had a lot of fights with several pirates. The bar owner couldn't recognize him, meaning that he probably didn't do anything crazy yet. But we're gonna assume he affected the island that he had visited. Later in his journey, Roger reached Water 7 and had Tom build the Aura Jackson, which allowed him to continue on his journey and conquer the Grand Line, visiting almost almost every major island. It is also very highly underestimated how big the islands in One Piece are, as some of them can be as big as the country of Australia itself. He wanted to reach the final island, and it is possible that even at the time, the pirates in the New World would be much stronger than the ones in the East Blue or in the Grand Line. The most notable mention would be the Rock's pirates. It is safe to assume that his clashes with the Marines and rival pirates left a lasting impact on many of those islands. Some of his clashes could possibly alter huge islands like the Luffy versus the Flamingo fight. He terrorized the world government and the Marines at the time. By the end of Phase 1, Roger's expedition gave him the edge with 1,344 points compared to Hashirama's 208 points. But don't count Hashirama out yet. This is just the beginning. And it's time for the fun parts, the glory days. We're coming back to Hashirama, who has now become the leader of the Senju clan. While he continues to clash with the Uchiha, especially Madara and Izuna, the ties have shifted in the favor of the Senju clan, and that is due to his growth. This has eventually led to Tobirama killing Izuna, the brother of Madara, and one of the strongest Uchiha. This wouldn't have been possible if Madara hadn't had his hands full. To result, a power imbalance, causing many of the Uchiha to reconsider Hashirama's calls for peace and surrender altogether. This event had a huge impact emotionally on Madara, but it has also boosted his strength, granting him the internal Mangekyu Sharingan. Eventually, the imbalance in strength led to Madara's defeat, but before Tobirama could deliver the final blow, Hashirama intervened. In his desperation to see this peace, Hashirama almost sacrificed himself before Madara stopped him. That resonated with Madara a lot and led him to accept the peace deal, which is a period of peace that haven't been seen between the Uchiha and the Senju for centuries. Witnessing this powerful alliance, other clans began forming their own alliances to keep up with the power of the Senju and the Uchiha combined. Not long after forming the peace, Hashirama, alongside Madara, founded the village hidden in the leaves, Konoha, which grew over time and invited the rest of the clans, eventually reshaping the Land of Fire, increasing its size, and making a stop for the constant territorial battles. The rest of the world witnessed this nation growing, and so other nations were formed, triggering a massive shift in the world's political systems. Later on, Hashirama held the first Kage summit. After capturing all of the bijus, he offered to distribute them between the villages so that there would be a power balance, believing that it would create peace between the villages and that they would hesitate before going to war. But little did he know that the wars did not begin simply because he was alive, because shortly after his death, the first ninja war was waged and resulted in the death of his brother Tobirama. Some of the ninja wars were waged for the biju monsters that he distributed. During his life, Hashirama also trained Sarutobi, which would later become the professor of shinobi and the third Hokage, and made him advocate for peace the same way that he used to do. At some point, Madara goes rogue and fights against Hashirama numerous times. He would later be defeated and forced to retreat and hide for the rest of Hashirama's life. Madara was about to create the Infinite Tsukuyomi plan, and Hashirama's existence is what prevented that. The least you could say about the Infinite Tsukuyomi is that its world ended. That's it for the glory days of Hashirama. It is time to jump into Gol D. Roger. Roger's crew, Garp, and the Marine fought against the Rock's pirates, including the Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Shiki, and Rock's the Zebek. You can only imagine how a battle between all of these giants would go on. But it's not only about the damages dealt to the island, because Zebek was after the empty throne, and claiming it could possibly mean ruling the world government. And Roger, being as powerful as he is, was the key player to stopping that from happening. Although I am not really sure how much effect would be on the world if that throne would have been claimed by Rocks. But I'm just gonna assume that a lot of tyranny would have happened. And to me, preventing is like doing. After leaving the Gold Valley, Roger stole a treasure, finding Shanks inside it. He brings him aboard, keeping him with him and training him into a powerful figure who would eventually become one of the 4 emperors of the sea. If it wasn't for him, Shanks wouldn't have become a strong pirate, possibly not a pirate at all. Shanks, like any other Yonko, has his territory in the New World. I would assume that he was not very territorial, or at least he did not have his way the same as the Big Mom or Kaido did. If anything at all, he would be protecting those islands from the rest of the Yonko. Roger knew that the God Valley was not the final island, and so he continued on his journey, finding the poneglyphs, reaching Skypiea and the Fisherman Island, and eventually reaching Loftail. In that island, he discovered the Will of the Deep, the story of Joy Boy, and the legendary treasure known as the One Piece. This discovery cemented his title as the Pirate King. At this point, Roger was already the strongest and the most wanted wanted person in the world, and this discovery put everyone he ever interacted with in danger. His crew members, his allies, and even those who have worked for him, as the pirates and the marines were going after them as a means of pressure on Roger in order to claim his treasure. And while he is the strongest in his crew, he probably wouldn't have done this on his own, as he received a lot of help to gather the poneglyphs. This is the final score on the board for both of them after their glory days. But it is not over yet, because there are so many important things that we haven't mentioned. Phase 3, the legacy. Yeah, we're coming back to Hashirama once again. A lot of people might have heard of the Hashirama cells jokes and how they run the show of Naruto. Well, that didn't come out of nowhere. And no joke, this guy's cells are game-changing. This biological superiority is what gave Hashirama his rapid healing and the ability to use wood release. It turns out you could steal some of his cells and plant them in your own. The first to ever discover this hack would be Madara Uchiha. After his defeat at the Valley of End and realizing he could not beat Hashirama, he decided to take a piece of Hashirama himself, extending his life long enough for him to activate the Rinnegan. To save Obito, he again used the White Zetsu, who came from Hashirama's cells, and allowed him to survive. This dude, who was so heartbroken at losing the love of his life, would go on later on to form the Akatsuki and wage the fourth great ninja war. Yeah, what a disaster. Later on, Orochimaru has received the update of the Hashirama cells and began his experiments on 46 boys, eventually creating Yamato, which has helped contain the Kyuubi numerous times and was used to enhance the White Zetsu army. Yeah, also there is Danzo. Nobody gives a fuck about him. Later on, they would be used to advance the ninja world medically, as Naruto was able to restore his own hand thanks to that. Decades after the death of Hashirama, he was revived through the Edo Tensei by Orochimaru. His return during the battle with Sarutobi pressured the Hokage into using the Reaper Seal, which resulted in Sarutobi's death, and it's very possible that if Hashirama was not revived, he wouldn't be forced to do that. That alone allowed Orochimaru to survive, which would later then train Sasuke into becoming as strong as he is. During the Fourth Ninja War, Orochimaru, in a request from Sasuke, summoned Hashirama alongside the other Hokages, in which they were informed of the Fourth Ninja War and Sasuke's possible decision to destroy Konoha. Sasuke asked Hashirama explicitly to explain the history of the Senju and the Uchiha and the history of Konoha, and it was said that his answer is what would shape his decision. Hashirama's wisdom and choice of words eventually made Sasuke decide to aid in the battle. Without him, Kaguya wouldn't have been sealed. It didn't stop there, because as Hashirama arrived there, he immediately took the attention of Madara. Madara, excited to fight him, sat there and waited for him to finish holding the Kyuubi off. Together with the other Hokages, they created the Hokage barrier, which was able to hold off the Kyuubi. He was able to hold him on the ground with the 10 seals, and then create 4 wooden clones, 3 of them aiding inside the barrier, and 1 of them fighting with Madara and keeping him busy. After Obito broke that barrier and reaching to this moment, Hashirama's words were important to boost the morale of the alliances and help them extract the Biju monsters out of Obito, leading to his defeat. And then he would defeat Madara and hold him in his place for Naruto to attempt to seal him, if it wasn't for the Rinne Tensei, of course. Hashirama's achievements earned him the title of the God of Shinobi, a title that is globally recognized and cemented his place in the history of the Shinobi world. Perhaps one of the best things that Hashirama did for Konoha during his lifetime was pushing for the concept of the Will of Fire. This ideology, deeply embedded in Konoha's culture, continued to inspire Shinobi long after Hashirama's death. When it comes to building the village, it is possible that Tobirama was the one to do most of the legwork. Now coming back to Roger. The thing that Roger did that affected the world the most was his last words at Logtown, in which he announced that his treasure is real and that it's out there for everyone to find. He ignited the new age of piracy, in which thousands of people saved the seas in order to find his treasure. This has changed the world dramatically. The number of pirates skyrocketed so much that the Marines and the world government could no longer contain all of them, which forced them to form systems like the Shichibukai, where the Yonkos were factions who ruled over vast territories in the New World. This, without a doubt, has destabilized the global order, and the impact of this era has continued until today, which may culminate when Luffy becomes the Pirate King, potentially changing the world in a very similar way to Roger. Too many islands have suffered from their rulers, Luffy, Kaido, Arlong, and many others. Roger's title as the Pirate King, while it inspired many pirates, it also made him despised globally by civilians and the Marines. And apart Upon his death, the world government and the Marines were afraid of a son of his blood being born so much that they inspected every pregnant lady in the last islands Roger has visited, killing many of them at any inkling of a suspicion they have. This led Rouge to maintain Ace in her belly for 6 more months, which led to her eventual death. When Ace was born, he lived in hiding, and his life was shaped by this fear, shame, and hatred, as he was constantly burdened by his father's name. Later, he sailed to defeat the Whitebeard, joining his crew, and ran into the Blackbeard, captured him, and handed him into the Marines. Thanks to his bloodline, they decided to set him up for a public execution. This invited the Whitebeard and his allies, and set off the Battle of the Marineford, involving hundreds of thousands of Marines and pirates in a deadly confrontation with immense casualties on both sides. At some point during Roger's journey, he clashed with the Whitebeard, and then asked him to take Auden with him in a journey. Auden agreed and witnessed the secrets of the lost century, the Will of D, and Love Tale. He also understood how important Wano is to Joy Boy in the future. Knowing this, he endured years of suffering and humiliation for the sake of Wano's future. Although Roger didn't directly suggest for Auden to do that, without him this wouldn't have happened. And lastly, Roger's influence on future pirates, especially Luffy, is one of the most enduring impacts, as Luffy, inspired initially by Shanks and the stories of Roger's exploits, dreamt of becoming the Pirate King. Shanks wouldn't be a cool pirate if Roger didn't exist, and Shanks was the one to inspire him. Luffy has affected multiple nations around the world and caused chaos everywhere he went, and it is very possible that he would partake in a world-defining event in the future. So I guess we're gonna give him that. So we have reached the end of the video, and it is time to reveal the result. After using the scoring system and calculating, the final score is 12,310 compared to 16,327, which makes Hashirama the clear winner. This could be shocking to many of you, but when you think about it, it does make sense, because every time Roger's name was mentioned, it was often glorified and exaggerated. And while he is undoubtedly the most famous in his verse, fame and influence are two very different things. Hashirama takes the win because he wasn't just a legend of his own time. He was a teacher, a leader, a builder, an advocate for peace, and a very powerful person who not only has lived his life but was revived on 2 occasions. But what made the real difference is that he was important to prevent world-ending disasters, the 4th Ninja War, and Madara's early attempt to incite the Infinite Tsukuyomi plan. So I hope that made sense for all of you. What do you think about the scoring system? Did it help put things into perspective? Could I make it any better? Did I miss anything? Please let me know in the comments section. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. Also, check out these 2 videos. Stay tuned and see you soon.